All right. I think we're live now. Let's see. What does it say here? Oh yeah, reviewing my debate with Unchained Skeptic. All right. So, my laptop is not connected. So we're gonna have to figure that out. I go live and realize that everything's not set up. So what I want to do tonight is review my debate that I had recently, my first online debate with Unchained Skeptic, and just kind of see how it went, and obviously take some notes of what I could improve on, and just kind of my overall thoughts and opinions about the debate, and maybe like just elaborate on points that I was trying to get across, and his arguments. So let's see if we can get this going. I guess what we should do is, I guess I should get my display capture, right? Yeah, so my display capture, and then we'll move my, or whoops. Man, here we go. Bucked it all up. Alright, so hang on, let's just do this. Alright. Now we'll do that. I'll try to fix this. Okay. Try to fix it. Get it nice and snug. Alright, so I guess we'll go to his channel, right? Because if we were to watch it on my channel, it would just be basically me staring into my own
Than
face.
Jesus.
Yeah, no. So we'll go to his channel. Because I'm not going to sit here and watch myself. Alright. So, okay, so it looks like he had to start 2 streams. So we'll start with this one. And I was kind of between now and after the debate, I did kind of go and check it out, just parts of the debate, but tonight I want to actually go from start to finish and actually do a thorough review and analysis, I guess, of the debate. So of the debate. Why is my laptop not connected? Alright, so let's pause this for now. Guess my laptop's not going to be working. Oh, here we go. That'll work. Nope. Alright, well, gonna have to bust out the old phone because I'm not, don't want to deal with that right now. Okay. Whoops. Now, why is it not showing on here that I'm live? Like if we go to my YouTube, does it show that I'm live? Looks like it is, yeah. Then I don't know why it's not showing up on my phone, which is kind of weird, but all right. Let's check this out again. Okay, yeah, so now it's saying it's live. Alright, so
Let's see here. All right. Let's notify the old Discord.
Just trying to set it up, so let's go to where we. Oh, but yeah, you know, it's.
Oh,
I guess
yeah.
it's good to have Discord and. Are you? What are? So that's just
Last night, like I really, you know, there's a lot of stuff that you say during the live stream.
All right.
So Unchained Skeptic, you popped up into my, you know,
Short
because
feed.
I'm on YouTube YouTube all day long, right? You know, just watching shorts, reels, and you know all that stuff, videos, and you kept popping up in my feed, you know, when I was scrolling through shorts, and first couple of times I, you know, if it's compelling, like if it's a compelling title, like you know, you had a compelling title, like it was like, you know,
There is no God or something like that.
there's no God, you know, former Christian, now atheist. Like, you know, that's compelling stuff because I like listening to like objecting worldviews and so I listened, and then, you know, last night, like I really, you know, there's a lot of stuff that you say during the live stream, that I had, you know, it's just one of those things, like if you're just another, you know, yeah, like if you're just another guy in the chat, it's hard to like, you know, you want to have a more of a engaging, more of an engaging discourse as opposed to just like let me try to write something in the chat and then have you respond to it. So that's why, you know, that's why I got a little bit, you know, kind of turned up the troll, I guess, a little bit. And
you got to stick out, you know. So I get it.
You know, and then I was like, you know what, screw it. I'm gonna, and so yeah, so for people that are watching, I actually offered, I
really need to work on not saying every fucking 5 seconds. That's one of the first things hey, there we go. That's one of the first things I noticed when I started reviewing clips of it after the debate, was that I just it's like every other word so I really need to work on that if, you know, if I want to get better and, you know, eventually do some more debating online. So yeah, man, it's and it, there it is. So I guess before we keep going, I wanted to preface this by saying that, you know, I believe that you can hold the right position but still lose a debate. I think it happens all the time. I think that any amateur or professional debater will tell you that you can absolutely be right about something. Your position can be 100% accurate, but you can still lose a debate because maybe you're debating somebody who was a lot more skilled than you, a lot more experienced. So obviously, this sounds like I'm just kind of coping and making excuses, which to a certain degree, that's fair. But it is fair to point out that, you know, it is something that's true. So, and in fact, speaking of true, that's one of the things that I really want to focus on when we really start kind of diving into the debate. So let's keep going for now.
Super chatted Unchained $100 to debate me, and obviously he accepted.
Yeah.
So that's how we kind of ended up here now. But I personally got into kind of like sucked into the debate world. Like I said, kind of because I was online. I started live, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 minutes before you got on. So I was just kind of yapping about how I kind of found the debate community sphere on YouTube, which there's a massive debate community. Now, I mean, I don't know if you consider yourself a part of the debate community, or you're just kind of have your own channel and you do your own thing. But
yeah, more so like just content creation over debate in particular.
Sure, yeah. And slash, I mean, it all boils down to, at the end of the day, it all boils down to entertainment, right? I mean,
fair.
I wanted to do this, and I do disagree with you, and I do want to kind of engage with you with your ideals and your worldview, but it's more so just because I enjoy it. It's fun. This is my first, and I don't know about you, but this is my first online debate. I've never debated anyone online. I've had
not mine, no.
Not yours?
No. I used to be around the block a little bit more. Yeah,
okay.
Used to be a lot more into the sphere of actually like offering like one-on-one contentions back and forth or whatever, but I don't know, it cut too many people out of the conversation, and also people were exhausting. People are exhausting, so just more so veered into let's hang back a little, vibe out a little bit more, and just have a general discussion with whoever scrolls in.
And that's cool, and I'm down for that too. Like, I mean, I guess we can kind of start off, because I watched your one of your videos that you posted recently, like about a week ago. It was just basically, it was like a 12-minute video of
why I love Christianity.
Yes, and I had questions on that video, and I mean, if you want, we can kind of start with that, and I can maybe ask you some clarifying questions.
Sure. Yeah, let's go for it.
And then we can kind of go from there. And then on my and again, before we start, like, I just put my live stream right now, I just named it Debating Unchained Skeptic on the Existence of God. And if we kind of spur off and go into other areas as far as just religion in general, I mean, I'm open with that. But I mean, we can just kind of stick just to that, or we can kind of just go with the flow, like you said, and just kind of see where we go.
I typically stick with just religion because I feel like there's more meat on the bones of arguing something objectively false or correct with religion versus something like, I don't know, for instance, like politics or something. It's where it's more more feelings based. So
yeah,
I like
that. Well, I didn't mean necessarily like off the top.
To be fair though, when you're talking or having a discussion or debate about something like the existence of God, it's almost impossible not to kind of spurg off into some other areas, because God obviously is tied to, especially if you're coming from a religious perspective, God is at the fundamental part of everything, right? I mean, it's the core of it's the core of your existence. So it's, you know, sometimes easier said than done, right?
Topic of religion, but I mean maybe like more if it's kind of leading away, not away from the existence of God, but like maybe like other religions. If that happens kind of organically in
Mhm.
our discourse, then I'm all open for that. So
Yeah, let's
I
do it.
just want to make sure we were kind of on the right page. Okay, so um
Um,
so first, so are you said in the video one of the first things you mentioned is that you are now a atheist agnostic.
Agnostic atheist, yes.
Okay, so agnostic atheist.
Mhm.
so now, before he, you know, starts explaining this position, I really don't feel that I got a. At the end of it, I really don't feel like I got a good definition um, of that. It didn't make sense to me because uh, atheism and agnostic, two separate things, right? So it was, even though, you know, the whole debate, I completely disagree with Unchained Skeptics, you know, worldview. Obviously, that's why I wanted to debate him to begin with. But he actually was super cool throughout the whole debate. Um, I would argue that he almost kept his composure a lot better than I did. And you know, to be fair to me, uh, he does this, you know, on a regular basis with the streaming. So the more you do it, you know, you get a lot more comfortable, and it showed that, you know, uh, he talks regularly and was comfortable with it. So, but he seemed like a chill guy just in general. You know, he seemed like a really chill dude. Obviously, again, totally different worldviews, which is cool. But you know, just as a guy, he seemed like a super chill dude. So, you know, always got to point that out. So,
Now, um, so I know what those two things are. I know what an atheist is, and I know what an agnostic is. But what is an agnostic atheist
Um,
or
so they're
atheist agnostic?
so the claims on two separate positions, right? So to be agnostic, you have to basically say, I don't know if there, as far as religion goes, I don't know if there's a God or not. And I'm agnostic about it for sure. I don't know if the universe was caused by something that made it go from existing to not existing to existing, and if that were the case, I don't know if the thing that did such a thing was a god, had a mind to do so. I think it's unknowable, so I'm agnostic about that. But ask me what I believe. If I had to take a guess based on the evidence presented about the ideas of God that we have as humans, I don't believe any of them. So I'm atheist about it, and so I'm agnostic and atheist. It's one's a claim of my knowledge, the other's a
well,
claim of my belief.
yeah, I'm still, I still don't understand what that means. The way that he, now that I'm like listening to it again, you know, based on what he said just right there, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, it kind of doesn't matter because, but I think it is still important to point out that it's, you're not atheist agnostic. I think he's just agnostic because he said that he he can't really be sure how the universe, you know, came into existence. So, you know, that's basically, you know, that's the agnostic worldview, right? As opposed to atheist, where it's just you don't believe in anything, right? You don't believe in, uh, you don't believe God exists. You don't believe the devil exists. You know, and so I don't know. It just seems a weird way to point to make that position. So I don't know, but like I said, ultimately it doesn't really kind of matter because at the end of the day, when you're dealing, and this is the thing that I was trying to convey to him throughout the conversation, was that regardless if you're atheist, agnostic, uh, you know, secularist, nihilist, it doesn't matter because you can't uh, you have nothing to ground your morality and your ethics in. Everything essentially comes down to your preference, and this is all stuff that you know. I think I even mentioned it, throughout the debate about guys like Andrew Wilson and Jay Dyer who've really kind of to a certain degree inspired me to kind of get active in the and I've always enjoyed it anyway. I've always enjoyed debating and having conversations. So you know, but when it comes to IRL, you may have friends and family that maybe they like engaging in that kind of stuff sometimes, but a lot of the times, friends and family just kind of be like, dude, let's just keep it lighthearted and just talk about other stuff, which is fine. So that's why it's nice, just kind of being able to have something like YouTube where you can get out there and just basically find people, other people who are like you and just love having civil discourse. Although once you enter the debate sphere, obviously things can get really contentious because that's what the whole point of debate is. But yeah, man. Uh, let's keep going, and I'm gonna stop uh, yammering.
So yeah, I mean, I guess I'm still so agnostic. Uh, so atheist. Okay, atheist. From what I understand, the definition of the word is that you are convinced that you don't believe that God or Satan exists. Period.
Correct.
But if you're agnostic, you're not sure. Like you are open to the possibility that there could be a God, but you don't know if there is a God for sure or not. Is
Uh,
that correct?
Both correct. Sure. Yeah. Let's work with that.
So then I guess so how can it be that you can be like and I want to get into once we get a little bit deeper, I want to get into things like logic, but I mean how can
I really need to work on my just slowing the fuck down in a conversation. I don't know if it was because I was just kind of nervous, and I'm sure I was, because I did ultimately. It's funny because uh, Dark Days told me to just record it. Don't go live, just record it, and then if you need to edit it or whatever, you can do that afterwards. But I was like, nah, fuck it, we'll do it live. But I mean, it is what it is. Uh, but yeah, I really need to focus on slowing down. And I remember I had Unchained's YouTube channel going during the debate, and I was kind of keeping an eye on his chat. And there was one person who was like, "Oh my God, get to the point." And now that I'm rewatching this, I was like, I don't blame them. Like I kind of, I feel like I was talking as if I was on, some like Adderall or something. So
how can you be both atheist and agnostic? Like that part is a little bit it's like either in and this might be getting a little bit caught up in the weeds, but I think it's kind of important because I really want to
Mhm.
understand I want to understand your position. I want to understand your world view. That way we're not talking past each other. So when
Sure.
you
Yeah.
say I'm both atheist and agnostic, that to me is like, well, how can you be one? How can you be two things at once? Like to me, like
I'll
either
I'll give you an example real quick
yeah,
if you like. Okay.
sure.
So I'm going to ask you two questions really quickly. The first one is, do you know whether or not there's a blue shirt in my closet?
I don't know for sure. No, I don't
Okay.
know if there's a blue shirt in your closet.
Right, so you would be agnostic about the idea of a blue shirt in my closet because you don't know me, don't know if I even have a closet, don't know if I like the color blue, don't know if I wear. I mean, I wear shirts, but don't know if that's what I tend to wear or whatever. But my second would be, do you believe that there's a blue shirt in my closet?
Uh, do I believe that there's a
A blue shirt
so
in
the
my
first
closet.
question well, I don't have any information to believe either way, but I
Correct.
know that there absolutely is a possibility that there could be a blue shirt in your closet,
Right. And so that
right?
would be
Right.
agnosticism, right? It's a possibility. It's for me, I consider it an unlikely possibility, but a possibility nonetheless, right?
Right.
Whereas, so that's a claim on your knowledge. I don't know, as how we relate it to religion, I don't know if there's a God or not. But the reason I'm an atheist as well is because that's where, do you believe that there's a blue shirt in my closet? That's where you come to a guess, you come to a belief system about it, you learn more about me. Do I like the color blue? Does it seem like I would wear the color blue? And then you make a seemingly educated guess about the fact of like, okay, yes, I believe there's a blue shirt in your closet, even though I don't know, or no, there's no blue shirt in your closet, even though I don't know. So, in the same way with an agnostic atheist, it's like, I don't know if there's a God that made everything, but I could either believe it that there is one or not believe that there's one without that impeding on the fact that I'm openly saying I don't know one way or the other. So that's how you can be both agnostic and an atheist.
I don't know, man. I feel like he's still just an agnostic. I don't understand why. Um, I don't get why he doesn't just say that he's agnostic. I really don't understand it because it sounds like, and I could be wrong. You know, I could just be completely misunderstanding what he was trying to say, but based on everything he said, again, he's just an agnostic. So I don't understand why he was trying to make that distinction with the atheist agnostic, but whatever. You know, again, it's ultimately doesn't really matter because of his worldview. So
Yeah. I mean, it kind of. I mean, I suppose for the purposes of this conversation, slash debate, we can. I. I mean, and I'm willing to come back to it, but that's still. I don't know. It kind of for me still doesn't kind of clear it up because it's like I mean you've kind of talked about logic before me streams. I've heard you
Mhm.
multiple times kind of bring up logic, so you're familiar with obviously the laws of logic, right? And
Yeah. Oh
okay,
yeah.
so like the three laws of logic, so like for example, like the law of identity,
like
how can you be how can you be like two things? So that's why I'm just trying to figure out like do
S-
you so
so
you don't know you are open to the possibility that there could be God, but you don't have enough evidence to believe that there is a God. Is that correct?
sure, I think that's a workable enough position for sure, but to make it like really drive the point home, it's that you do acknowledge that like knowledge and belief are two separate things, right?
Knowledge and belief are
Hmm.
two separate things.
Yes.
Um, I would say, well, I would say like it would depend on what your belief is based on, and like what your um, and again, what is your knowledge based on?
Sure.
So,
Is it? I'm so sorry. Is it possible for somebody to genuinely believe something that's false?
yeah, 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 absolutely.
Awesome. And is it possible for someone to know something is true after looking at the evidence available for the thing? Right.
Is it possible for someone to?
So to like knowledge is just justified true belief, right? So a knowledge of something would be that I know that I'm speaking into a microphone right now because
Mhm.
I can see the microphone. I'm very clearly speaking into a microphone, but a belief would
Yeah.
be something like what causes my microphone to work. You can make guesses about it. It could I don't know how a microphone works to be honest with you, but you can make guesses about it, and your guesses are going to lead to beliefs, even though they could be wrong or right, depending on how you know a microphone works. So it's possible for somebody to know something and also have separately believe something, and they're not mutually exclusive ideas. So that's how agnosticism and atheism aren't mutually exclusive.
you know, so he was trying to make the point that knowledge and a belief system uh, are two separate things, right? But and this is another thing with debate that I think I really need to get better at is and I think it, unfortunately, a lot of it comes down to just the individual. But having a really good memory and being able to just recall things and being sharper, I think you can work on being sharper, but people just have an amazing. There are people who have such an amazing memory. Uh, Sometimes I'll listen to podcasts or whatever, and some people just have an amazing memory, and they're able to remember statistics and facts. You know, Not only that, but they're able to do it in the right moment. So that comes with being sharp and having your debate skills honed, and knowing which way to go with the rebuttals you're working with. So definitely need to work on that. But his point anyway, back to his point when he's talking about knowledge and belief, it's like, well, you're you have to first explain what knowledge is. You have to explain what it is, and is it based on truth? Is knowledge based on truth, and is it based on objective truth? And that was the other huge uh, contention that obviously he and I get into a little bit later on, was with the whole concept of, is there objective reality? Is there things are is everything mind dependent, or are there things that are not mind dependent, and they are still true even without the existence of the human mind? So
To
Interesting.
to
Yeah.
really hammer it home, is it possible for somebody to not know if God is real but believe in God?
Um, is it possible for someone to know that God is real but not believe in God? Is that what you asked?
No, not know that God is real but believe in God.
not know that.
Not know that God is real
Hmm.
but believe in God.
Correct.
Well, if they don't know, well, that's uh, agnostic. That's agnostic, right? Is that
Yeah, you be agnostic, but your belief in God would make you a theist. It wouldn't be a claim on your Gnosticism or your knowledge. It would be a claim on your theism or your belief in a God. So it's possible for somebody to say, I believe that the Bible's true, but it's impossible to know. Do you think that would be a fair position?
no? Because there's certain things that you're kind of baking into the hypothetical, um, like if somebody says, "Well, I read the Bible." Like if I say I read the Bible, but I don't believe that God is real because I read it in.
I think a better way that I should have handled that particular uh, objection that he brought up was the fact that when it comes to when it comes to religion, but specifically Orthodox Christianity basically uh, cannot exist without logic. And so everything in Orthodox Christianity is based on objective truths and logic. So, and this is where the whole, where later we go into like, heresy and just like sola scriptura and just interpreting the Bible on your own. But there's problems with the way he was phrasing it, and again, it's just a matter of being able to be well prepared for all of these objections, and just knowing the way to word it. So, all good stuff to know for
And I'm just not
future
convinced.
content and debate, really.
From a Christian perspective, and I want to be transparent about when I say a Christian perspective, I'm talking specifically from a Orthodox Christian perspective. Like, are you Now, I know in the video you said that you grew up Baptist, correct? Like you went to a
Correct.
Baptist church growing
Yeah.
up? Yeah.
Mhm.
So are you familiar with Orthodox Christianity at all? Like Eastern Orthodox, like, Russian, Greek Orthodox
Uh,
Christianity?
Not about the particular doctrines that separate them from Protestantism, but I've met plenty of the Orthodoxes. Haven't studied it enough to be really educated about the differences between them.
Yeah. Well, and this is another problem, and this is kind of to your credit. This is kind of to people, as far as like people with you who hold your worldview.
Mhm.
Because I listened to, like I said, that video that that 12-minute video, and it's totally understandable. It makes sense. Somebody, growing up in a Baptist church where you kind of saw this stuff that you go like, yeah, this isn't Christianity, where, because you talked about how one of your pastors was having like an affair with,
Mhm.
multiple women and, all this other stuff. The point that I'm getting at is that there is a massive problem. I believe, I believe that Christianity is the one and true religion because
Mhm.
I do believe that Jesus Christ was real. I believe that Jesus Christ is our Lord and Savior, right? All that stuff. Um, but uh, there is a problem with Christianity because there's a massive heresy problem. There's a massive, and once you kind of, and again, I don't claim to be any type of expert. I am not an expert, but I have been learning more about Christian history and just the history of the church over the past 2,000 years. And once you understand the kind of the general um, you you understand kind of the general overview of the history, starting with like the Great Schism. It kind of makes sense why there's so much heresy in Christianity because, like,
If
for example,
I'm so sorry to,
you would agree with.
uh, uh,
Yeah,
you
no, go
know,
ahead.
no, you're good. You since you're leading to a question, I'll answer it.
Well, it wasn't necessarily a question. It was just basically there is a massive problem with heresy because, like, for example, like Mormonism, you know, about Mormonism, right? Like, it's
Yep.
it's complete nonsense, right? But it is
Yeah.
technically they believe in Christ, right? But it's like it's complete heresy because Joseph Smith, who was the founder of Mormonism, he basically retroactively wrote himself into the Bible
Mhm.
to make him be the prophet, which no, like that's not Christianity. That's so far from it. It's complete heresy. So there's a massive problem. And so what I've learned is that,
I
like
really am
you
kind of
said
ranting
that,
at this point,
um,
just
if you read, you
yapping
read the
away.
Bible and you just find all
And
these contradictions, right?
again, credit um, to Unchained. He was a really chill. Uh, I really am kind of ranting here, like I said, and so it was really cool of him to like, you know, uh, be patient with me as far as just kind of letting me go off. But yeah, I really need to my ums. So here's stuff that I really need to work on is the ums have got to go. The ums have absolutely got to go. The the rambling, I really need to get more structured and uh, precise and clear with my positions instead of just kind of spurging off like I am kind of doing right now. So yeah, I gotta get it, gotta work on
Right.
it.
So my question is, okay, what makes you, if you read the Bible, well, like let's just say one verse, right? You read a verse in the Bible, and you interpret it a certain way. How do you know, like if you're a Baptist, right? You're a Baptist, you're going to church every
Oh my
Sunday,
god.
and you read, and what Bible did you
Yes,
read when you went
yes.
to
Oh my god.
Baptist
Now I'm
church?
just asking
The
questions.
NIV, bad translation, but since then I've read the NRSVA, the New Revised Standard Anglicized one, which was
Uh-huh.
yeah.
So do you think that do you think that layman's, so like you and I are layman's, right? We're just average guys. Would you agree?
Sure, yeah.
I don't claim to be an expert by any means. I'm sure you don't claim to be an expert in Christianity and the history of the church.
Mhm.
But do you think that we as laymen's are qualified to interpret the text of the Bible? Because as you know, I'm sure you know that the Bible is not the Bible is a combination of several books that have been kind of put together, right?
I
So
think
do
we
you
as
think that we as
I think we as people that understand a language that we all share with the language that the Bible was written in, at least the one that we have access to, or that's what makes us qualified to at the very least get a solid guess of what the words are trying to say, right? I
See,
think
this is a big flaw in what he just said. Like, take a big guess. Let's listen to that one more time. Let's listen to that one more time.
average guys, would you agree? I,
sure, yeah.
I, I don't claim to be an expert by any means. I'm sure you don't claim to be an expert in Christianity and the history of the church.
Mm.
But do you think that we as laymen are qualified to interpret the text of the Bible? Because as you know, I'm sure you know that the Bible is a combination of several books that have been kind of put together, right?
I
So
think
do
we
you
as
think that we as
I think we as people that understand a language that we all share with the person with the language that the Bible was written in,
If we share a language,
the Bible is a combination of several books that have been kind of put together, right?
I
So
think
do
we
you
as
think that we as
I think we as people that understand a language that we all share with the person
I think that we as people understand.
with the language that the Bible was written in, at least the one that we have access to, or that's what makes us qualified to at the very least get a solid guess of what the words are trying to say, right? I think it.
Yeah, but that's the whole point. See, that's the whole point is you're not supposed to just read the Bible and just try to guess uh, what the Bible is supposed to say, right? I mean, you're supposed to have a priest. You're supposed to be attending church, right, Sunday regularly and listening to the priests uh, give uh, give the. I'm still getting familiar with all the terms, but I don't think it's sacrament. But it's basically the priests are your Orthodox priests are the ones who are technically the ones who are supposed to be interpreting the Bible for you and preaching it to you, right? So, and this is a point that he and I just couldn't couldn't come to an agreement on was the fact that uh, true Christianity is a holistic system, right? It's a holistic thing where it's not just you know like Andrew Wilson says, it's not just a mindset. There are things that you have to actually do. And you just owning a Bible and reading it every night, which is fine, right? You can have a Bible and like read it every night, but that doesn't mean that you, however you're interpreting it when you're reading it, every night, it doesn't mean that that is you're fully understanding unless you're somebody like Jay Dyer, right? Who Jay Dyer is a basically an expert as far as Christian apologetics, and the guy is, he's read, Lord knows how many books, and obviously he went to school for it. So unless you have that background, then you're really not going to know what's going on. Like, and we'll kind of get to it later on in the debate. But when he brought up slavery and all this stuff, it's like, well, okay, but that was all in the Old Testament, and that was part of Jewish law. The New Testament does not condone slavery, and that's one thing that I wish I had kind of, and when we get to that, we'll address that again. But again, just being able to recall things and just being sharp on your feet is just, man, it's crucial. It's absolutely crucial in debate. So, but yeah, he's uh, again completely disagree with his worldview. I don't think that most of the, even though he was calm and collect and he was able to kind of articulate what he was saying, but at the end of the day, if it's not coherent and if it doesn't make sense and it doesn't abide by the laws of logic, it's like you're not saying anything. It's just simple as that. You're not saying anything. You can't claim there's nothing is objective, but then be like, oh well, this is this is objectively my stance, my worldview is objectively true. It's like no, doesn't work that way, right? You don't get to have your cake and eat it too, right? So
If we can read something like, Jesus died on the cross for our sins and all that good stuff, and read it in English, since we share the language of English, if we were to read something like that and come to the conclusion it means like, okay, well, they're saying that Jesus was nailed to a cross by the Romans, died, rose up again on the 3 days or whatever. I think if we can read that well enough because we can understand the language that the Bible's being communicated in, then I think that makes us at least partially qualified to be able to say whether or not the narrative contradicts itself in some parts. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So, so well then, let's say you and I, we are reading the exact same Bible, like we're reading the exact same version of whatever Bible. You and I reread the same verse, the exact same verse, but I come out with a different interpretation. You come out with your own interpretation. So we read the exact same verse, the exact same Bible copy, but we have completely different interpretations of what that text is trying to convey. So how do you and I, two laymen who, we both admitted we're not experts, how do you and I determine whose interpretation is correct or more correct or less correct? How do we go about doing that?
I don't know. I want to say you defer to an expert, sure. Maybe
Right.
somebody who's
Well,
scholarly.
who would be the expert? Well, who would be the expert?
I don't know, like a scholar or something. I
Like
think.
just any scholar or?
so again, this is kind of interesting now that I'm like hearing this. Like the way he answers the question, it's obvious because see, that is a totally valid point, right? And if you can't agree to that, then I don't know. You got some issues, but it's totally fair to ask. Well, okay, if we're just gonna go off of if we're just gonna sola scriptura and just read the Bible, and every individual gets to have their own interpretation and their own customized interpretation of what the Bible is trying to convey, then um, well, how do we know whose interpretation is right? Right? If just two guys are just reading the Bible, right, and they are reading the same passage, same verse, and then they come up with two different interpretations, it's like, how do you decide? How do you decide who's right? So, the way that it's a fair question to ask, is what I was saying, is that, but also the way that he answered it, you could tell that he hadn't really thought about that, right? Because he goes, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I guess. So, right? Let's listen to that again.
We are reading the exact same Bible, like we're reading the exact same version of whatever Bible. You and I reread the same verse, the exact same verse, but I come out with a different interpretation.
I'm seriously like, what was it? Jimmy Two Times from Goodfellas? Literally repeating everything two times. I gotta go get the papers, Really gotta work on that.
You come out with your own interpretation. So we read the exact same verse, the exact same Bible copy, but we have completely different interpretations of what that text is trying to convey. So how do you and I, two laymen who, we both admitted we're not experts, how do you and I determine whose interpretation is correct or more correct or less correct? How do we go about doing that?
I don't know. I want to say you defer to an expert, sure.
I don't know. I want to say you defer to an expert. Well, it's like, is that how you do it? Is that how you do it? It's so, that to me kind of indicates that he hadn't really thought that far ahead about that, because like a lot of atheists, or I guess I should say former Christians, you know, I don't think that this guy's story is uncommon. I think there's a lot of people just like Unchained Skeptic. In fact, I've personally known people like this in my life who, they came from a Christian background, but not necessarily the same denomination, right? I mean, I've known people from Baptist, Protestant backgrounds who parents were very, very strict growing up, and but then they said they saw things in the church and uh, just knew that it wasn't Christianity, and so they left. So, and this guy's story was just like that. He saw a bunch of degeneracy and a bunch of heresy, even though maybe he didn't realize, right? I'm sure obviously he noticed the degeneracy and all the hedonism that was going on, but I don't think that he understood that he was in a heretical church. I think that a lot of people, they just assume, like I did, really, like growing up, you never really question it. The whole concept of different denominations of Christianity, right? Because the first time you hear about it, it goes, oh yeah, that makes sense. There's people all over the world, different cultures, so there's going to be different denominations, but um, and there's always going to be cultural differences. But what's important is the Christology, right? What's important is, you know, do you have the right Christology? Are you actually being taught what the true, you know, teachings of Jesus Christ was, and what the apostles, are you actually being uh, preached to by actual um, ordained priests that have apostolic succession? So it's unfortunate, it's really really unfortunate, and and like I was trying to tell Unchained, it's a massive massive problem in Christianity, and it's very detrimental. So
Maybe somebody who's
Well,
scholarly.
who would be the expert? Well, who would be the expert?
I don't know, like a scholar or something. I
Like
think.
just any scholar,
Yeah, I think that's about as best as we could have definitive, reliable access to. Sure.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, that's kind of a vague. I mean, just any scholar. Like, I mean, like, what if they're not a scholar of philosophy or theology? Maybe they're like a scholar of U.S. history, or like just like, I mean, any scholar is any
Well, there.
scholar from your.
I'd imagine we're talking about like the Bible here, so I would hope that implies that we're talking about a biblical scholar, right?
Okay, yeah. So like a biblical scholar.
Yeah.
Um, so, well, what makes the biblical scholar? Um, what makes them qualify? Like, so is it because they went to, I don't know, a Bible school, and they got a diploma in, you know, religious history, or like, what would you say?
Religious history, theology, things like that. I think they're going to do at least better, right? I'd imagine there's somebody who probably has more qualifications to the history, the
Sure,
intentions of the way it was written. But I mean,
sure, sure,
you look
sure.
to who
But at
has
the end of,
you look to who has some sort of worthwhile education in the field. I would hope we do that for every field. So I would hope we do that for the Bible when there's a misunderstanding as well.
I think that that's fair, but I mean, well, at that point, even though the scholar is probably a little bit more versed in the vocabulary, right? Maybe they're a lot more familiar because they studied it, right? Like they're familiar with the biblical terms, and maybe um, the like the time, the era of whatever, whether you're talking about the first century, second century, maybe they're just more familiar. But wouldn't it still be, at the end of the day, just kind of their own personal interpretation? Like, well, what if you have, and this is something that is this is something that happens, where you'll have two scholars, right? You'll have two reputable scholars. They both have
really
legitimate,
need to slow it down. Really need to slow it down.
like, degrees, and whether it's it's religious history, or maybe it's like specifically Christian history,
Mhm.
but they won't even agree, right? Like
Yeah,
they'll
of
come
course.
to a point where they have contention. So it's
Correct.
like, well, if the scholars are, they're not in agreement with everything, then how would we actually determine whose interpretation, whether it's the layman, whether it's the scholar, whether it's the YouTuber, how would we determine like whose interpretation is actually correct?
I'd imagine you're trying to go somewhere with it. So what would your answer be?
Well, yeah, yeah. So where I'm trying to go, and
So,
like
so,
this is
so, so,
again,
so, so.
um, once you understand like a few, once you like understand a few concepts when it.
God, man, it's like honestly kind of hard to listen to me just not being able to get to the point immediately. And I'm sure Unchained Skeptic was probably because he actually seems like I said, he seems like a really patient guy, but I'm sure even he was at certain points just going like, dude, just enough, just get to whatever the fuck you're trying to say. So, um, yeah, man, it's really gotta work on this for you know possible future debates. So,
when it comes to Orthodox Christianity. So, in Orthodox Christianity, Orthodox Christianity is apostolic Christianity, meaning um, you are not a part of the true Church of Jesus Christ, because the first 1,000 years of Christianity, and you can look this up, the first 1,000 years of Christianity, there was only just one church. And then the Great Schism, which happened in, was it like 1054, where basically Roman Catholicism, they schismed from the true church, like the Eastern Orthodox Church. Um,
Yeah,
uh,
somewhere in there.
you
another thing is, I really need to really got to get more educated with the church, with the history of the church. If I'm gonna bring this types of stuff up in debates, especially if especially if I agree to a live debate, because people that are listening, you know, people who might potentially, are considering possibly converting, or they're atheists, and maybe they never heard this stuff. I guarantee you that a lot of the people that joined in on that debate live, uh, I guarantee that a good portion, if not most of them, had no idea about the fact that there was a thing called the schism, and that there was only one church for the first 1,000 years, and uh, there is apostolic succession uh, that your church needs to have in order for you to be a part of the true church of Jesus Christ. So it's just, and again, this just goes back to the whole heresy thing of, and people nowadays, your average person, unless they're like really into it, they're not going to go and spend time out of their day and do research and find out about, the first 1,000 years of church history, or even the last couple of hundred years of, for example, Protestantism in the West, and how there's been massive problems that we're seeing today because of the Protestants that first established churches here in the states. So it's unfortunate. So my point was that I need to get better at explaining and get more familiar with the history of it in order for me to do a better and thorough job when I'm trying to get certain facts across in a clear and concise way. So
you are not allowed you the layman is not allowed to interpret. Only priests who have apostolic succession,
I
so
keep
basically
repeating
going back
everything.
to
It's
the
so
original 12
annoying.
apostles.
It's so fucking annoying
That is
listening to
how
me repeat
basically
everything twice.
you are to determine who is qualified to actually interpret. So it's not just like one person. I mean, there's multiple
That
people,
one.
right? It's
Yeah, like
priests that have. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was agreeing with you.
Yeah, so you would have priests that have apostolic succession who have been ordained and granted the the authority to actually preach God's word, right? To actually interpret the Bible in a holistic manner, right? In a holistic way. Because that's the other problem that I see with skeptics such as yourself, like atheists, agnostics. You want to, it's called, there's a term that's called quote mining, which basically it's like, okay, you open up the Bible, hey, look, you point to a verse completely out of context and you go, well, hey, see, here it is. Hey, guys, the Bible condones slavery. Isn't that like, that's not okay? Like the Bible, like, and in the video, I wanted to ask you about this as well. In that video that I watched, where
Yeah,
you said
really
when you
just
actually started getting
babbling a
into
lot.
Christianity, you started actually studying the philosophy. You started studying the philosophy and the logical
Mhm.
arguments of Christianity. Um, that you found that God was like this monster that like did these awful things. Like, can
Yeah.
you elaborate a little bit on what you meant by that?
Yeah, so God condoned the chattel slavery, the owning of non-Israelites by the Israelites as slavery to be as slaves to be passed down and bequeathed as property to their children.
All right, so he even see that right there. So that's when I should have maybe not interjected, but I should have, pointed out that what he said was that was in the Old Testament, right? That was in the Old Testament. That was a part of Jewish law. So again, this is such a big problem, with people who read, they just kind of quote mine and take things out of the Bible. Don't They may or may not have the right contextualized uh, interpretation, but they it doesn't matter because they're interpreting it from just a non-holistic view, from a non-holistic view of the church and the history. So it just becomes a problem, man. It's just a big problem when you just have regular people who read the Bible and they think they are interpreting it, and you know, and it's sad, really, when you think about it, where they left the faith because they didn't have the correct interpretation of the Bible, and they're reading it and they're thinking one thing, and it's kind of sad, it's kind of sad.
In the book of Leviticus, in the book of Deuteronomy, he condones the rape of unwed virgins insofar as the rapist has to give the father of the victim 50 shekels of silver, and now he has to take that woman as his wife forever. That's in the book of Deuteronomy. There's also the fact that he enacted a generational curse on quite literally everybody for eating a fruit off of a tree in the center of a garden that he put there, that he allowed the serpent in, and that with the foreknowledge that
Right.
everything would happen in the way that he did. Otherwise, I would call that a setup. I think that's pretty setup-ish for sure. And that's just barely scratching the surface. Those are like my top three for sure.
Well, so okay, so I just want to understand. So you read, and this is all information that you derived by reading the Bible, alone. Is that
Uh,
is that right? Or
yeah, I was able to speak the language that it was written in, so I felt.
I was able to speak the language that it was written in. So he's saying, I guess, that because the Bible that he read was translated into English, I think that's what he's saying, that he is qualified to interpret the Bible. Because the Bible that he read was in English, was in Western English, so he was able to read the words. That's almost like, you know, I guess to kind of use an analogy, that's almost like saying, I read a pamphlet, right? I read a pamphlet that was written in Spanish, but because the Spanish words were written in English, right? Like they were Spanish, right? The pamphlet was a Spanish pamphlet, but you know how when you write in Spanish, you still use basically English letters, right? It's just a matter of you're writing, you're using English letters to write Spanish words. So him saying that, oh well, because the Bible that I read was in English and I speak English and I read English, and so my when I read that Bible, I was able to read it. Therefore, my interpretation is correct. That's like me saying I read, even though I don't speak Spanish, I don't understand it, but because I read a pamphlet that was a Spanish pamphlet that was written in English with using English letters, that therefore my whatever my interpretation is going to be correct. It's kind of silly when you think about it, but again, I didn't think to tell him that, you know, while we were, going back and forth, but that's all stuff that you really have to, if you want to become a better debater, you really got to start to have that stuff kind of pre-equipped, kind of cocked and ready to go, so to speak, uh, so that you can utilize it, right then and there when you need it. So
Felt like I had at least decent
Okay,
enough
so well,
authority to
okay,
read it alone.
so well then let me ask then. So let me ask. So how do you know that this goes back to that? Like, how do you know that the way that you interpreted everything that you read as far as like God, and basically, condoning slavery
all
and
right,
doing these awful
I
things, like how
think
do you?
I'm going to end it here for tonight. I'm getting kind of tired. I was actually wanting to go a couple of hours at least tonight, but I am just really, um, man, it is just like it hit me about like 10, 15 minutes ago, but I just kept kind of going. But I am just absolutely wiped. So we're here. We'll just take off where we left off next time, right here at the 35-minute. So um, I'm glad I decided to do this. This is actually very helpful and informative for me. So we will definitely continue on with this next time I'm able to go live. So till then,